Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, episode number 17, we think. It's August 15th.
17-ish.
Yeah, 17-ish, whereabouts. And August 15th, 2020. Yeah, what's going on, guys? As you can see, we got a special guest back with us today. Mike, what's going on? Jay, how you doing?
Mike, what's up, man?
Hey, good, man. Just a lot of news. So a lot of news around sports. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about everything that's going on.
Been a busy week for sure. When you start a sports show in the middle of a pandemic and there aren't any actual sports to talk about, and then all of a sudden, every single week, you actually have brand new things to talk about that don't involve sitting around and wondering when something's going to start. So quite a time, man. Mike, you're right. A lot to talk about today. Kerry, let's just dive right into it, man.
Yeah, let's get going. A little background here. We planned to have Mike on this week for a while now, with kind of the idea that college football would be starting in about 2 weeks as we stand here on August 15th. And this week kind of rattled everything to its core a bit, and it was for a little bit there looking like we may not have any college football at all this season. As of now, the Big 12, SEC, and ACC are planning to play. So, instead of this kind of being our big overall Longhorn preview show, I think this is a great opportunity. Let's talk about kind of what this season, like what's kind of gone down nationally, but also it's been an interesting week for the Horns on the recruiting front, training camp starting. So let's just get right into it. Mike, what are your thoughts on this whole, the Big 10 and Pac-12 and the MAC basically shutting it down for the fall?
Yeah. So, I hate to start the show off politicizing something, but obviously the Pac-12, you've got a lot of the more liberal schools. And I think that, that kind of plays a role into it. And really you have to take into account that obviously this pandemic is not slowing down here. So, I think people lose sight that athletics are an extension of the school. So while we may all want sports to be played, and it's obviously the catalyst for generating revenue, at the end of the day, it's the school president that has to determine if he wants to take liability for anything that's could potentially happen. Obviously, I think we had the news that there were 5 players in the Big Ten that with that heart condition. So, it's a big risk. I just think the planning with some of these sports has just been off. If you were going to attempt the season, I don't know why you wouldn't stretch the season out a little bit longer to where you have multiple bye weeks in the season. I think that could have helped kind of control things. I like the way the NBA's obviously done it. A bubble situation seems like the best way to do it right now. Obviously MLB struggling with travel. I think anytime there's just travel involved, and you got college campuses that are about to open, I want to see the season get through, but is that even realistic? But I think we might try. So I think Texas was talking about 50% capacity. I don't know if that was ever realistic. So I think 25% is doable. But if you think about 25%, that's 25,000 people. And I'm still struggling with, as a season ticket holder, to determine whether that's something I even want to do at 25,000. So, it's just, still crazy times with college football. So much money. You look at the losses that the Big Ten and Pac-12 could take, and it's just crazy the amount of money that is going to be lost if they don't play. And there's absolutely no way they can play in the spring. Like, none of the top players are going to play. Why would you risk these kids, especially with concussions and all these things and draft stocks? Why would these kids risk playing 10 games in the spring and then trying to play a 16 to 20 game NFL season? Like, that's
or a full college season in the fall. If they're an underclassman or anything like that, you're talking with a 2-3 month break. Like, it's just not going to work.
No, it's not. And when you when you take a look at it from a financial perspective, Mike, that you brought up a good point, and we always talk on this show, follow the money. That's when what's going to happen is going to happen. Just follow the money, follow the paper trail. Well, a couple of these conferences have decided that the health and well-being of the participants for this game of football is more important than that money. And it's to the point now where I almost feel like these conferences that are saying they're still going to play are almost just pushing it out into the last possible minute, because when you look at these numbers and you look at, I just don't see how it's going to happen, even though these conferences at this moment are saying that they're planning on playing. I just don't understand how it's actually going to come to fruition. I would obviously love to see football, but I don't know that I would even want to see it when you start talking with the first one. Like, there's already the one player in the Big Ten whose mom made that big emotional social media post, and I believe he had one of those with the heart conditions. And when you see that, what's it going to take for somebody to say, you know what, let's shut it down? Is somebody going to have to die for that to happen? Is this going to have to be a development of, oh, well, that was where people start making excuses because, well, we just need to keep playing football. Where's the line here? We've been looking for that line for a long time. And
I think
I've constantly been on the side of not playing anything at all, unless you can do it like the NBA has done it, the NHL has done it in a bubble. Mike, just like you touched on earlier in the show, the travel seems to be a big part of this, and I just don't see how it's going to happen. But we'll see. We're going to talk about it like it is. We might as well talk about it like it, because they're planning on playing. So we can talk about what this is going to look like. Apparently, they're going the playoff system. They're going to crown a national champion this season if there's games played. So.
Yeah. And Kerry, just real quick before you jump in, even in the NBA bubble, you have guys doing stupid things like Lou Williams, and I mean the only way they can control it because you're in the bubble. But when you're not in the bubble, you see things that happen in baseball, and then just think 18 to 22-year-olds, like, what were we doing? I have two nieces that are in college right now, and they are bored out of their minds right now. And so to think that, and that what happened at Rutgers. Like, it's just these kids there's so many kids. It's like 80 kids a team. You know what I mean? How do you control every single one? So what are your thoughts, Kerry?
Well, yeah, you're hitting on it perfect. I saw an article earlier this week, and I don't have the exact details in it, but a professor at Penn State approached, either it was an administrator, the athletic director, regent, somebody at Penn State, and basically said, what if I had gathered up 70 of my students and we traveled to another campus for like a weekend, like symposium or something like that on their campus. We mingled with other students, 70 other students from that campus. And then we all came back here to Penn State and were amongst the rest of the student population. And we did that every few weeks. And then we invited another group of students from other campuses around the country to do the same thing here. Could I do that? Would that be allowed? And that they said, no, hell no, you can't do that. It's in the middle of a pandemic, all those things. He goes, so why are you letting the football team do it?
Right. Yeah. And then you see the thing at Florida State where, I mean, even if there are parameters around it, schools are going to try to take advantage of these parameters. I think the kid said that they were kind of hiding like COVID results and things like that. And
there was what was it? Was it Western Kentucky or another?
Yeah,
it was
Western
a school.
Kentucky too,
yeah, that was like just outright hiding results, not telling players that who somebody tested positive, just completely shoving everything underneath the rug.
So negligent.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask you guys a quick question before we. Oh, absolutely, and especially when you mention like this talk about having players sign waivers and all those things. If you have them sign the waiver and then you're hiding the results, then you're never going to be held accountable, right? But a quick question on this before we kind of move further into the week that the Longhorns have had, and we talked about the stadium capacity. How would you guys feel? Does it change your perception at all if the schools that as of now are playing came out and said, there will be absolutely no fans in the stands at any of these stadiums. We're going to play, but everything's going to be behind closed doors and locked down. Does that change your perception about there potentially being a season in any way? Or are we too far gone at that point?
Man,
Jay, what do you think?
We're still talking about the interactions between the players on the field. We're still talking about, I mean, obviously that makes it, I guess, quote unquote, safer. But it's the same exact situation that you described from the professor. It's why would we intentionally gather this many individuals at any one place at any one time? Obviously, if there are no fans and you could limit the number of players on the sidelines. Like, you don't need 85 players to dress. I mean, maybe you do, but you don't.
I agree with that. I don't think you need 85 players to dress. I don't. Like, what's the point? I mean, 50 players probably see the field, so maybe 60.
How do you determine that when those are scholarship
No, yeah,
athletes
that's
as
the
well?
issue.
You know, and
With
that's where
athletics.
Yeah, now that's the point, Kerry. You're exactly right. Is how do you make these determinations and make sure that everybody is safe? You can't do it. Like, you just can't. So does that thought to me make it safer? Yeah. Is it still doing everything that we can to keep these student athletes safe in their environment? No. And in my opinion, it's not. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy on both sides, to be honest with you. Like, so, you know, Trevor Lawrence and all these guys are coming out saying we want to play this, and that, but then they're asking for, you know, more liability from the university. It's like, that's like trying to have your cake and eat it too. Essentially, it's like, hey, let me play, but I want you to obviously protect me at all costs if something goes wrong. Like, you're not accepting any responsibility for being the one that wants to take on this pandemic. So that's a little frustrating. And then the fact that the NCAA already is a nightmare in most scenarios. Yeah. Not even just. I mean, look at everything the NCAA does. You just kind of shake your head, whether it's violations or transfers, or, you know, you see like the NCAA makes so many poor decisions that this is like the worst organization in sports to try to like battle this. And now we're going to ask them to somehow make this all work. Yeah, I don't know. Like, we'll see what's going to happen. I'm still struggling to determine if I can go through with going. I'm going to the games at 25%, but do I sacrifice not seeing my dad for 3-4 months because I don't want to go watch college football? Like,
that's a great point. I hadn't even thought about that aspect of it. I mean,
yeah. So my dad is not going. He probably hasn't missed a game, and he's probably only missed a handful of games in the last 30, 40 years, and there's no way he's going. Like, it's not even in the question. He's, you know, 7 years old, and you got to think a lot of the season ticket holders are, you know, a lot of them are older and they're going to opt out and things like that. But, you know, the biggest thing with this whole pandemic to me is I'm not necessarily afraid for myself. I'm afraid for, you know, the people that are older. So, you know, the thing that's kind of scary is that you put all these people, and people make dumb decisions. We see it every day in life. And, you know, I hate to bring up, you know, Donald Hawkins played for UT, and he had an emotional post about his father dying from COVID. He played for the Panthers for a few years. And it's like, you know, how did his father get? You never know. So, you know, it's a scary situation. I want the season to happen, but I don't think there should be fans. And I think, and if there was a way to cut down the rosters or even traveling roster, I think that's something that has to be explored. But to me, it seems like there's no plans in place. Like, it's everyone for themselves in these conferences. So you need some kind of uniformity, like the NBA, like, to make this work. So I don't know.
Well, and Kerry, that's we talk about it all the time. Everything that Mike just describes just further reinforces the fact that the NCAA is toothless, is worthless,
useless, just completely useless.
Just absolutely useless.
Yeah. How can we trust them when they let Justin Fields transfer and play the next year? But I forget who the kid was, but he transfers back home to be closer to his mom who has cancer, and he doesn't get a waiver to play. Like, it's just like, and this is the organization that's supposed to figure this out this year. Like,
and I'll say this on the 25,000 capacity, and I'd say, Mike, mentioning your father, that's not the first case I've heard of people that are longtime season ticket holders. I know a good friend of ours, her father played for the Horns back in the late 70s. He's gone every year, all those kinds of things, and he's not getting anywhere near campus this year.
No.
But to the whole thing, when we talk about like, 25% capacity, you go, oh, that sounds pretty nice. Oh, well, only 25,000 in the stadium compared to 100,000. But anybody who's ever been in that stadium, you're talking about one person every 4 seats.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of space. If you sitting in those narrow seats in the stadium, and then you're not even talking about the people in the rows behind you, the rows in front of you. 25,000 people, and there's still a lot of people.
You're not even talking about the lines to get into the stadium. Like, you still have 25,000 people trying to. What are you going to do? Like, tell people to come 3 hours early to like make sure everyone's socially distanced to enter the stadium.
And then enforcing tailgating
as they come in.
Yeah.
Like, do you not get right in if you're 100-degree temperature?
Yeah, enforcing tailgating, and then how do you do restroom lines? How do you do concession lines? How do you do all these things? And like,
and then you're going to serve alcohol? Like, then people really don't care. I mean,
Yep.
And that's the thing. Like, these universities can to a degree control their players and their coaching staffs as much as they can. They cannot control the fans.
All right.
You're putting so much faith as a conference, as a school, as a program into the fans doing the right thing before they come into the stadium on those Saturdays. If you cannot guarantee that, then what's the point?
Right.
It just, I don't know. I'm still a little skeptical we'll have a season, but I think y'all mentioned it earlier. It's kind of, it's kind of like, yeah, but y'all hit on it earlier about like they're saving it to the very last moment to try to do this thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for
exactly.
sure.
There's gonna be some knucklehead that does something dumb, like, and it's gonna shut this whole thing down. Like, so hopefully that's not the case. So we'll see.
Yeah, but on one hand, the season may stop, but on another hand, recruiting does not. Kerry, we had some big news this week, man, on the recruiting front, didn't we?
Yeah, some good news for the Horns. So let's get into some positive news regarding the Longhorn football program. Yesterday, perfect timing. I appreciate them making sure this dropped before this week's episode. Mike, you want to get into this here? I mean, this is about as big of a commitment and as big of like news that you can get in recruiting. Regardless of what class it's in. I mean, here it is on the screen. It speaks for itself. Mike, you want to go into the importance of this and a little context?
So this is one of the biggest recruits in program history. So Quinn Ewers committed yesterday from South Lake Carroll to Tom Herman and Mike Yurcich. And this is the biggest recruit since Vince Young. This kid has I know he's just a sophomore, but he has all the tools. His numbers that he put up last year are like out of control. And he's the consensus #1 recruit in the nation. So you look at the, 24/7 Sports, their composite rating has him at a perfect score, which has only been done once in the last, I think they've been around for almost 20 years. And that was Vince Young. So this is
not
huge.
bad.
And yes, this is for the 2022 class. So he's going to be going into his junior season. And this doesn't get any bigger. Because now you've got kids, not just in Texas, but all over the country, commenting. It's kind of like what Spencer Rattler did for OU, a few years ago. So it's like you get this kid on board. This isn't, some, high 4-star. This is the top guy out there. So you get this guy in, it's automatically going to draw attention to your program in a positive way. It's going to draw attention from recruits. It's already affecting, I think, this year's recruiting class. You're seeing a lot of the guys that are in this year's class and a lot of the prospects from this year's class having an interest with this commitment. So think about the Texas quarterback room here in the future. It's going to be pretty amazing. Probably the most talented quarterback room we've ever seen on campus.
You're taking the words right out of my mouth there. I actually have a question about that coming up, a little bit about the future of that quarterback room. But because now, after a decade of quarterback irrelevance, here we are at just a loaded room. I guess in terms of Quinn Ewers as a player, what I've heard of him is basically regardless of class. Like if he was in this 21 class, he would be the #1 player in the country. Like he's already that developed. I've heard the comps to Trevor Lawrence in terms of his preparedness, what he's going to be doing coming in directly as a freshman. I've actually heard, and I don't know, I mean, it's just the hyperbole and like the excitement behind the recruitment, but like he's actually further along a bit in his development than Trevor Lawrence was going into Clemson as a true freshman. That's pretty exciting. I mean,
yeah, it's
it
huge.
doesn't get much bigger than that.
Yeah. So,
Well, and when you start comparing guys to Vince Young, you're obviously I would immediately tap the brakes because it's Vince Young, but
right.
and the guy's a sophomore too, so to already be in that conversation, there's obviously something there. So
yeah, the arm talent is crazy.
Well, to see to know that guy has 2 more seasons of high school football to develop. It's pretty nice to see a name like that. And Mike, that was the question that I was going to ask you coming out of this was how this can help immediately from a recruiting perspective. And it seems like it already is, like you said. So to get a big name like that, we on this show we've talked about Tom Herman. Is he the guy to take it to the next level? And when you start seeing these names come in, I think you have to start leaning towards him being the right guy, at least in terms of recruiting. Now, can we see the results on the field? That's the next step. And when you start getting, sometimes the old saying goes, it's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes. And when you start to get the Jimmies and the Joes on campus, and if you know where how to set them up to be successful, that's how you win national championships.
Yeah, I mean, having this type of stock pool talent at the most important position in college football, like you said, Kerry said, we'd spent 10 years trying to figure out, how to bridge the gap from Colt McCoy, and here you are sitting with back-to-back number 1 player in the state quarterback coming in to the program. Not to mention this kid's the number 1 player in the nation. So that it's going to be obviously not all these guys are going to stick around. It's going to be a war here in a few years. I mean, you've got Hudson Card's getting rave reviews right now in training camp. Maybe already getting number 2 reps, and you've got Jalen Milrose, not a slouch at all, and then this kid. So it's really exciting. I mean, this is probably the most exciting thing that's happened in Texas recruiting in a really long time, and it's awesome that it happened so early that now you can start the train rolling for 2022 and complete this 2021 class. So really big things and a great job to Tom Herman on this one. You have to give him credit. And now where the issues lie, obviously you got to get these offensive linemen in. You got the skill players. You're starting to build some defense. So, this is a great start, and he's just going to bring players with him. So amazing job to Yursich and to Tom Herman on this one.
Yeah, it's a huge get. Mike, I want to ask you a couple questions. Let's start related to the 21 class and the effect that this could have. Any chance that this kind of commitment can bring the Brockermeyer brothers back into the fold? Does this open the door a little bit to maybe pull those guys away from Bama, or has that ship sailed?
I always want to hold out hope, and with legacies, I think you can always hold out hope on that. That was a huge recruiting loss. So you think back a month ago, we were like, man, like this might not be, 2021 is not going to finish the way that, we really wanted it to finish. And now you look at it and the momentum shifts that have happened since the Brockermeyers committed, it has gone complete 180. So you have to think the Brockermeyer kids are looking at this and it's like, how do you get exposure? Well, you play with the best players, right? And quarterback's the biggest position to do that. And you always have mom, dad, and brother that are, UT, legacies, and that the brothers at UT right now. So there's a chance. And I think if there's a season that happens, you see Sam Cosme, the left tackle, have a great season, and you see Derek Kirstetter move into that center slot and, grade out as a 4th, 5th round grade. Now you're starting to put 2 offensive linemen in the NFL. You have to at least think about it if you're the Brockermeyers. I get it that Alabama puts in, 1 or 2, 3, it seems like every year, and not just slouch.
Top 5 quality.
Yeah, top 5, top 10 quality offensive linemen. So I completely get it, but this is going to have a huge impact. It might not be with the Brockermeyers, but you're going to see it with guys like potentially like there's a couple running backs now that may not have been leaning Texas, like L.J. Johnson, that now he's starting to look at coming to Texas along with Kamar Wheaton, the running back as well, and that's for 2021 class. So,
was Wheaton an OU lean? Was he viewed as like more of an OU lean?
So Wheaton's considered number one back in the state, and he's probably a 50-50 right now. Obviously, Texas is stockpiling talent at these positions on offense. It's kind of ridiculous at the moment. You look at Bijan Robinson, you move the super athlete, just all over the field there. So he's going to be a huge factor this year. And then you think about it, if you can get L.J. Johnson and Kamar Wheaton, I mean, you look at the quarterback and running back room, that would be you're going to be contending for titles at that point if you can get the right offensive lineman and continue to develop the lineman that you have, and that's going to be a huge thing going forward.
Exactly. Yeah, I got to start building up that line, which the recruiting there hasn't been bad. I think the Brockermeyer thing kind of stings a bit because that was really that's the cornerstone piece that could really get it going. But otherwise, it hasn't been bad. Like the lineman recruiting has been fine.
Yeah. And since the Brockermeyers, we've picked up 4 recruits since that time. So I'll pull up the screen here for you guys and kind of highlighted them here. So if you look at it here, Jameer Johnson, cornerback out of Pasadena, California, almost kind of the same type of player that Ibrahim is, who we talked about last time I was on the show. Another big get, a 4-star cornerback. If we could recruit defensive back like recruit offensive line or we're recruiting defensive back, this train would really start to roll. But this kid's a really talented player. You go down the list here. These are some underrated guys, and I'm not just saying that as a homer here, but you got to look at the teams that are recruiting these guys. So, like Gunnar Helm, he's a 4-star tight end out of Colorado. This kid was heavily recruited by Iowa. Iowa has several tight ends starting and in backup roles in the NFL.
Great name, too.
Great name, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Great name too.
It's a good it's a good name for like definitely like some kind of weapon, an offensive weapon, like down the field. Gunnar Helm. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, we need to recruit another Colt quarterback. Colt McCoy to Gunnar Helm on the
Colt to Gunnar.
Yeah, no. So I mean, and the thing with this is, when was the last time Texas recruited a traditional tight end, not a spin down or spin from wide receiver? This guy is a run blocker, and he can catch the ball. So you've seen the guys that we brought in recently. Malcolm Epps moved over to tight end.
Yeah.
So this is huge, and Iowa has a history of putting these guys in the league. So what are your thoughts on this kid?
No, I think it's huge. I mean, I think even you talk about just the way that the tight end recruiting is gone. I mean, even someone like Braden Liebrock, who's like kind of another guy that's kind of a tweener. He can be an outside guy.
He's more of an H-back David Thomas type role.
Yeah. And then also, his name's escaping me right now. The kid from Temple that that was a freshman last season that's been playing a lot at tight end. That was another one that was Jared Wiley. That was the converted quarterback at Temple. Right. So like to go out and get this proper tight end, 6'5", 225. Right. That's a beast.
Yeah, he's a devastating run blocker too from his film. So big get right here.
Well, yeah, and that's when you talk about it, he had 27 offers.
Yeah.
Including Iowa. So this wasn't just, people wanted him. It's nice to see. These are the types of guys that when you talk about Tom Herman getting the right guys on the field, when you talk about him getting the right talent here at the right positions to turn this program around. When a proper tight end, you get in the top quarterbacks in the state and some of the top quarterbacks in the country. The offensive linemen, I wanted to just interject with the Brockermeyers, the being able to get them to at least think about this now. I feel like Ewers has been on the phone. I feel like that's something that has already happened.
DFW
that communication is there. So, but then looking at this, Mike, what were some of these other guys a little bit farther down this list?
So I know they're farther down the list, but Jaden Alexis right behind these guys, this speedster out of Florida. It's crazy that we went in and pulled this kid. The offer list on some of these guys that aren't quite this 5-star tier are 5-star offer list talent. This kid can fly. I think he's closer to about 6 foot. But you need one, maybe even 2 of these guys that just bring absolute speed to the field. So he committed to Texas a few weeks ago. This was a big get. beat out Miami, went into Florida, got this kid. So I have really high expectations for this kid, just speed-wise. You got to be Yurcich, I think, is going to be able to utilize this kid. So I think that's a big get here. And then down here at the bottom, so not the highest rated recruit, was actually a 2-star on Rivals, got a little bit of a bump. I guess you could call that the Texas Kool-Aid bump, but Michael Waslinski here. So speaking of Gunnar Helm on the true tight end position, I can't think of the last time the Texas has recruited a true center prospect, and that's what this kid is. He has NFL bloodlines, along with Jaden Alexis. Like, so you're getting kids that have NFL bloodlines in them. And this kid, you put on his film, and he is a center true and true, has good athleticism. I think he's just going to continue to climb the rankings as more of that film gets distributed. And so I think this is a really nice get because you think of Dom Espinosa as one of the true centers recently. But other than that, you've got like Herstetter's moving in from tackle this year. You've had Chris Hall, who is really a guard. You got to think of a lot of the centers that have come through recently at Texas really having to learn the position. This kid is really just a center. So I think that stuff kind of goes underrated, especially on the offensive line. So another big get. So
he seems to have good size too. I mean, 6'3", 285. That seems to me the type of frame that, let's say in a crazy situation that you do end up getting both Brockermeyers back in and you have one of them that's a center, you're not Mislinski seems like the kind of guy that you could spin.
Put
out.
a guard.
Yeah, you can get him in some different positions, bulk him up a little bit if you want to. Like it seems like sitting at that kind of frame, you can do a lot with him if you do end up getting one of these 5-star centers or something in the next year or two.
Well, to me, I feel like it's easier to move a player that's played center his whole life to guard rather than moving a guard over to center. So if you just get the talent, and like you said, like with his frame, depending on his reach, depending on how much weight he can put on, it might even be a thing where you slide him out to tackle, depending on your depth chart and where the need is. But yeah, when you talk about bringing the Brockermeyer brothers back in, that's just something where, Mike, I think you hit on it in terms of everything lines up to just with the legacy, with the way that the recruiting the sort of the momentum behind the recruiting here on campus on the 40 acres. It's the type of thing that you can hold out hope for. And that would be, to me, Tom Herman flipping the Brockermeyer brothers would be like, okay, I guess this is the guy. And for me, that would be okay, now we're rolling. Now we're cooking with grease. I'm still not sure if Tom Herman is the guy at this point is sort of what I'm getting at. I think that's still up in the air. And when he starts pulling these guys, I'm moving a little bit more towards it from the recruiting standpoint, at least. And Kerry, we'll see where this goes, but you have to be happy with the direction that this is headed.
Yeah, different variables at play, but it would almost have the feel of Mac flipping Chris Sims from Tennessee.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
it's that kind of, obviously different positions, not a legacy, those kinds of things, but something to really make people take even more attention.
And just one more thing on the 2021 class real quick. This has to finish out with some of these higher profile offensive linemen like you're talking about, Brockermeyer. You can get away with not getting these kids. You need to get one of Bryce Foster or Savion Byrd. And right now, you'd probably put them under 50% to come, but you have, you have kids in that Katy area recruiting Foster, and then Savion Byrd. SMU is the leader. He's not going there. I think it's really going to come down to Texas OU. And this Quinn Ewers thing, like you don't know. So I think percentages are going up on these guys, and they want to play for the right quarterbacks, the right running backs, and Texas is getting those guys. So we'll see what happens. But that would be the last pieces that you really need to put this thing together to be a full class and just well-rounded class. So,
well, if we have some games, if they're able to start putting together some wins, I think they can get that kind of momentum, especially now with getting a big quarterback out of DFW, and maybe that influences someone like Savion Byrd to jump on board. But well, guys, we got a couple minutes here before break. If we want, we can go ahead and head into break now and come back, and we can hit on some of those training camp kicked off, and we can kind of get into some of those positional battles for the Horns, and then get into the rest of the news of the week. So if that sounds good for you guys, we can go ahead and take a break now, and we'll come right back.
Yeah, man, let's do it.
All right. See everybody in just a sec.
All right. Yep.
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show. Got Longhorn Insider Mike Holland spending the show with us today. So we're going to jump right back into the Longhorns here. Mike, there was a question I wanted to ask you before the break, and we were talking about recruiting in the quarterback room and the future of the quarterback room at Texas. So looking at the way it stacks up, you have Hudson Card, Jaquindon Jackson, Jalen Milroe, and now Ewers coming in. In your mind, just to project, look into the future a little bit, obviously not all four of those guys can be starting quarterbacks at the same time. How do you see this playing out? Is there a name, or is there anybody that you kind of peg as the one that, I know it's early and all the, anything can happen,
Right.
but with the transfer portal, all these things, how do you see the progression happening here? And is there anybody that you think is maybe potentially a transfer candidate now with this commitment?
Yeah, so, the four guys that you just mentioned, I mean, any school would take one of them in a heartbeat. Now you're going to put potentially all four. I don't know if all four make it on campus at the same time, but embarrassment of riches right now. So everything at a training camp right now, Hudson Card is crushing it. That guy's a super athlete. Everybody's pegging him to take over next year. I think the most underrated guy right now is obviously Jaquindon Jackson, because he's more of an athlete. But I actually think he's probably got the highest ceiling of these guys, because anytime you're an athlete and you have the build that this guy does and you have a chip on your shoulder, can you imagine him right now? All the camaraderie for these other three guys. And this guy's not a slouch either. So, I think he's probably going to be the guy to kind of watch for that may sneak up. We were kind of talking off, on break, just about how, kind of the Ryan Perley saga and how Texas wanted him so bad. And then next to there's the little Cole McCoy 3-star at a Jim Ned, and he turns out to be, top 3 quarterback of all time in program history. So you can't count out, not saying that Jackson is a low-rated recruit or anything like that, but just the pecking order, you're probably going to put him 4th right now. Jalen Milroe, he's kind of been radio silent the last couple of days on social media. So I don't know if this viewer is going to impact him at all. I know he's been pro Texas through and through. You got to wonder if he's going to question that. We'll see where that kind of goes. And then Ewers, I mean, you're just looking at, everybody sees him as the number 1 player in the nation, regardless of class, from a lot of sources. So you're going to probably lose you're going to lose one of these guys, most likely, unless Jackson loses positions, which is a possibility. That guy could be a defensive end. I think you could probably play him at linebacker. You never know tight end who could be in his future. And let these guys go to battle. And Yurcich did a great job at Ohio State with a lot of these highly talented quarterbacks, and he worked them all out. So what do you guys think?
Well, I think Tom Herman even did that, sorry, Jay, just real quick, just his, with him managing 3 quarterbacks and winning a national championship at Ohio State. Tom Herman was able to kind of manage that and keep guys in the fold when injuries happened, and said, he got Cardale Jones drafted just based off of those injuries, and having him do what he did in the playoff and then the national championship. And I think Yurcich is also good. He's got some history with that, but it's, sorry. I'll just last thing. I think Jaquindon Jackson, I've heard linebacker is kind of potentially the spot for him. And I guess it's going to be more of a willingness of how much does he want to try to get reps at quarterback versus go ahead and adjust to a new position and try to make his future there.
Kind of like Roshan Johnson.
Yeah.
Now look at him. So.
That's another guy, that quarterback recruit that was fairly highly touted coming in, that now I didn't even remember him playing quarterback at this point. But anyway, sorry, Jay, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, that's all right. No, I was gonna. Well, my question to Mike was going to be about his will. Did I think Jackson had a willingness to transfer? I mean, to move positions. But instead, I'll ask you, Mike, of the other 3 that we just discussed. Have you heard anything about one being more likely to leave than the others? Are any of them more solid, committed, to the program than the others, or is it just sort of up in the air right now?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of up in the air right now. I mean, you look at it, and it's kind of a dream school situation for Ewers and Hudson Card. They've always wanted to play for UT. Jalen Milroe, I think, might be the one that we're a little nervous about because Alabama's in play on this one. It may be a small percentage chance that could happen, but you got the Brockmeyers there, and they're going to be in the thick of everything when it comes down to it every year. So he's the one that I would be a little nervous about, but with him having Hayden Connor there and, the whole Katie connection thing, and he's been so active with putting together the 2021 class.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's afraid of competition because, honestly, why would he commit when Hudson Card was the number one quarterback in the state anyway? So, and he's a year ahead of him. So pressure makes diamonds. And honestly, I think there's so much history of just because these kids all go to one school, they can all be successful either at that school or going immediately to look at Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. Right. And just because you start out somewhere, and kid from LSU this past year, he left Ohio State. So just think if Ohio State had Burrow, Justin Fields, it's crazy. So I think when you're this talented, it's a great thing to have at Texas because if you look at it, and I think Casey Thompson could be a good quarterback, but if you look at it this year could go down the drain if Sam Ehlinger gets hurt. But if you have a stockpile room of these quarterbacks, kind of like what they did at Ohio State with Cardell Jones, and you're down to your second and third string and you can still go out and win a national title, you're recruiting lights out at that point. So that's just kind of my take on everything.
On that point about Thompson, and if Sam goes down, I mean, from what we're hearing, would it be all that surprising at this point if something were to happen to Sam that Hudson Card's the guy?
Yeah,
From what we're seeing from camp and the way that he's bulked up, he looks great and apparently playing really, really well. I think you mentioned earlier he's already getting reps at number 2.
Yeah.
So, how much do they just go ahead and give him the keys and say, let's go? And then you see Casey Thompson. He was already in the portal once before, right?
He's already in the portal. Yeah.
I don't blame him. You want to play, but I don't know if he's going to beat out Hudson Card.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I think with Casey Thompson, the thing is that he's been in the program for so long that I think if we get into the season and it's, you're looking at a perfect season, I don't know if you bring in Hudson Card at that point. I think you go with, especially if it's against a team that is a Kansas State or something. I think you go with the sure thing, rely on your running game, have Thompson make a few plays, get you through to the next week type scenario, and then really, in a perfect world, you want to redshirt all your.
Oh, Mike, we got you. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, just imagine if Sam had a redshirt year. So I think the goal, you'd probably want to redshirt him, especially in a shortened season. And, that just does wonders. I mean, Vince Young redshirted, so that's, it doesn't mean he's not talented, obviously. But, we'll see. It's fun. This is exciting times for UT fans right now. So.
I wish you wouldn't have mentioned Kansas State though, because we'll get into this. We'll get into this in our actual. Yeah, we'll get into this in our season preview show coming up here before things actually kick off. But when I look at the schedule and I see December 5th, last game of the season at K-State, going, oh no, that just has. I'm not looking forward to that one, but
every sport with Kansas State.
Yeah, we'll worry about that when we get to the season preview show. But
Mike,
Jay,
do you think? Yeah, Mike, real quick, do you think that? I guess I should have just flat out asked you earlier. Do you think there is a willingness in Jackson to move positions? Do you think is that something that is it 50-50? Is it something that he's openly talked about doing?
Yeah, I think it would be 50-50. You've got Roshan Johnson right now that has been a massive success moving from quarterback to and I think that's something they probably talked about being listed as an athlete. Hey, we can try you out at quarterback. Imagine if Gerard Hurd had, he developed a pretty good receiver. You know what I mean? If he'd spent his whole time there, who knows what could have happened? Because especially in college, I think experience, and we talked about with Lindsey starting at the center position. I think it has a lot to do with development. Sometimes you can stunt development if you don't get those guys over there. Like Malcolm Epps, it's man, I wish he would have started there and redshirted there. So we'll see what happens with that. But
if you've got the talent, the NFL will see it and draft you.
Oh, yeah.
And if you have the ability to get on the field, I feel like more and more, especially these days, these players are doing everything they can to get on the field. And if they feel like it's a situation that they can be successful in, they're going, and Texas now seems to be shaping like, hey, Finley. Texas seems to be shaping into that program now where maybe we're going to start seeing guys getting drafted again and players feel like, okay, as long as I can just be seen at Texas, I have the talent to get drafted as long as I can get on the field. So maybe hopefully Jackson has that mindset, and if he has the ability to show out and do it.
Yeah, he's an ultra athlete, so.
Right. Yeah. So that's the kind of, like you said, we have this embarrassment of riches. That's a great way to put it. And when you have that, it's when you have guys that know, okay, I'm here, I'm in this room right now, but I'm also here to do whatever it takes to make this program succeed. Those are the kind of guys that once you get a room full of those guys, a locker room full of those guys, then you start to see programs win at a high clip and do it consistently. So hopefully this is that tipping point for Tom Herman for this football program to really start to head in that direction.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think on the point for Jalen Milroe, I think it was interesting that you mentioned the Katy connection there, and that Hayden Connor's committed to Texas. That was one of that part of that circle of lifelong friends there. It's been interesting though, because when Milroe committed, it was kind of this aspect of it's going to open up like all these guys like Bryce Foster, Tunisi, Adele, like all these guys
he just decommitted from Ohio State, but I think Florida's in the lead for that.
That's
one.
what I'm here in Florida, but like
but
it's
Jalen tweeting him a lot, so we'll see.
yeah, I mean it's but it was kind of this thought like, okay, well Milroe's going to bring all these guys along with him, and it's kind of interesting to see that hasn't quite played out the way that people thought it would, and I wonder how much that could affect whether Milroe decides to stick and maybe start, because it has seemed like for at least last couple months now there's been some kind of questioning about the firmness of the commitment, but we'll see. It's a good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think too many quarterbacks.
I think it is a problem though if he's not in this class, because you absolutely hate going a year without a quarterback in your class.
Yeah.
So they need to hold on to this, not only for his upside, but just for depth purposes. You never know. Viewers could get injured, or there's so many things that could happen. Yeah, you never know. So yeah.
Well, let's move on a little bit here into the current season, if we have one. That is that camp's getting started. I know we wanted to kind of talk about some of these positional battles that were going on. And Mike, any intel, anything that you're hearing from campus about some of these battles that are taking place in camp?
Yeah. Toss over the host to me. I can pull up the screen here, and we'll go over. Yeah, I got 3 battles that I kind of really wanted to talk about. It's obviously training camp that just started, so there's a lot of talent on this Texas team. At preseason ranked 14th, I believe. So I actually think that's there's room for upside on that. I think they got top 10 potential this year. Obviously, Big 12 should be Big 12 co-favorites at this point. So just kind of looking here, just wanted to touch on a few spots here. I think the biggest battle is going to be the slot receiver position. And you are taking 2 kids, a Gatorade National Player of the Year and Jake Smith, who had a pretty damn good start to the season last year, and Jordan Whittington, who nobody's seen this kid, but on a college football field, except for maybe one catch against LSU, he has massive upside and was a 5-star recruit and was a crown jewel of that class that he came in with. So I think you can play obviously both of these kids at the same time if you're going to open up to 4 wide receivers and play them both in the slot there. But I think, from all reports and everything, these 2 are going to go at it. I think Jake has a little bit of a head start just because he's been in the program. Jordan Whittington's been kind of nursing injuries. So I'm really excited to see this. This is kind of a win-win situation. And the great thing too is even if it is Jake Smith in the slot, Jordan Whittington, you can play him at so many places. You can literally roll 3 wide out. And I think that's what Yursich is going to come in, and why this is going to be such a huge difference with the offense. And you should be putting up 40 regularly, is you can put Jordan Whittington in the backfield with a Keontae Ingram, and then split him out into a slot, and also have Jake Smith on the other side of the slot. So there's just so much flexibility that you can have with these kids that it's an embarrassment of riches. Even at the receiver position that may not seem like the strongest position, there's some heavy hitters in this position. So what do you guys think of the slot position and receiver position?
Yeah, with Whittington, dealing with the opening camp with the hamstring injury. I figured that would sort of put him behind the 8 ball a little bit there. But I feel like both of these guys will get on the field early and often. Is Whittington a guy, Mike, real quick, is he a guy that you could see just in sort of a jet sweep motion type of a deal where you just get him moving? Yeah, Kerry
Oh,
and I
God.
have the
Are they
played
doing
that
the
thing,
Monroe?
jet sweep sound.
Oh
Oh
man,
man.
it just
Anyways,
like PTSD for jet
yeah,
sweeps, man. God, I just see
it's,
Maryland running that like 5 times in a row, nobody being able to stop it. Like, what a
oh, I'm
you didn't have
sorry,
to
dude.
say it that way,
I
man.
hate to
You
give
could,
you the phrase. I know, and it's
oh,
a hand, but Mike, is Whittington a guy that you could see in the jet sweep type motion being used
Yeah,
effectively in an offense like this?
yeah. So you can put him all over the field. I mean, his state championship game is probably one of the greatest high school performances we've seen in a long, long time. And so this kid is a special, special talent. If he can just stay, injury free, we can really start to develop this kid. And the sky's the limit for this guy. I mean, he already looks like $1 million. So it's just getting on the field, getting that production, getting the reps, and just letting his talent take over. And yeah, he's kind of that wild card where you can move him all over the field, give him some carries, jet sweeps, swing it out to him, put him in the slot, create mismatches. And that's what Yurcich is getting paid to do. And I think Tom Herman trusts him to do that, whereas Tim Beck, I think, kind of set in his positions and, you know what I mean? It's just there's now I think we're going to be more multiple. I can see a scenario where it's like, Bijan Robinson and Whittington in the backfield with Jake Smith in the slot and then splitting, Whittington out, and it's just creating all this havoc for Big 12 defenses. But the first thing is getting Whittington on the field and, staying healthy. And then Jake Smith just building his confidence. I mean, this kid was like Gatorade National Player of the Year for a reason. He's got massive talent, and he's perfect for the slot. He's a slot receiver in high school. He's perfect for that position. It's just really unlocking these two kids, and I think both of them are going to do great things this year. So it'll be interesting to see how we go.
Yeah, I think they're both going to be just fine. I think Jake Smith kind of had to deal with the Drew Maringer, situation last year and that kind of stuff. And I think he's going to be ready to go. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of win that slot position. And I think not so much maybe because Whittington didn't play well enough for it, but I think like you're saying, you can play Whittington anywhere. Right. I mean, just think about what they can do. He got time at running back last season when the running back group didn't have as much depth. They've got Keontae Ingram, Rashawn Johnson. You can put Whittington back there, Bijan Robinson. Like, all of those guys can do so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
Is it that hard to envision a situation where all four of them could be on the field at the same time?
I think that's what Texas fans want to see, is something where you have that. So
you can even put Rashawn Johnson in like a Wildcat. Wildcat. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it would be beautiful. I don't know. I'd probably shed a tear if I see that.
It's so beautiful.
As long as we're seeing play anything besides like bubble screens, just throw that out. If we see that sort of creativity on offense, man, I wouldn't know what to think. Yeah.
So just kind of moving on to the next position battle I have on here. It's going to be at that open guard spot. So you have Tope Amade and Tyler Johnson really battling this thing out. And also you can look at Isaiah Hookfin, who's not on this screen, but making some noise in camp. So obviously your offensive line is going to be a huge part of your success this year. You've got first-round talent at left tackle, so Sam should be well protected. With Sam Cosme there, you're going to move Kerstetter to center, and he's a senior, and he knows the position. He's played there multiple times over the course of the last few years, and an NFL prospect. And then you're looking at, obviously, Junior Engelau last year at guard as a freshman, had a really good season. And a lot of reports are saying that he could kind of be that next guy in line to be that NFL player. So he's at that one guard position. Right tackle, you've got a lot of experience with Denzel Okafor. Luckily, he came back because that's going to be huge. He's going to man that right tackle position. And I think you have a chance to be a really, really good offensive line. He's got some starts under his belt. He's got a lot of experience. So, with offensive line, sometimes it's really just experience. And then you got this last guard position. And I think this is kind of, the weak link of and who's going to step up and take this position. Is it going to be, Tope Amade, who wasn't a highly rated recruit, kind of like Sam Cosme, but look at this kid, 6'6", 355. Like, this is a bull. That's one of the strongest players on the team. Can he put it all together? He's a senior this year. So Tyler Johnson, it was one of the highest rated recruits in his class. He's a redshirt freshman. Everyone was super excited about this kid. These two are going to go at it, and you may see some other guys kind of step in there as we go through camp. But whoever wins this is going to be that guy they're going to count on to make this whole thing complete. So what do you guys think about this final guard spot?
Yeah, I think it's the classic experience versus potential situation here. I think Amade he's bringing everything to the table with the experience. I could end up seeing that being what pushes him over the edge here. Tyler Johnson's super talented. He's got a bright future ahead of him. But how quick or how early, I guess, do you want to really throw him into the fire?
Right.
Especially when you have someone with as much experience as Tope has. So I think, I think Amade wins the job, but I think Tyler Johnson's going to see a lot of playing time too, though. I can definitely see him getting rotated in and out and getting a lot of reps and getting him ready for taking over, for the rest of his career at Texas in that spot. So, Jay, what do you think?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the offensive
Yeah,
line?
no, that was that was my take on Tyler Johnson too. Absolutely, he'll see time, but I don't think he'll be named the starter from day one. That's a position where you can keep guys fresh and you can really trust who you have at guard, no matter who's on the field. That's a luxury to have that, and I think that they have two guys here that are serviceable enough to get this job done at a level that will protect Sam, will run block well, will get the job done. These are two guys that, at least together, between the two of them, can fill this role. Tyler Johnson's got a ton of talent. And I can't wait to see him in a full-time role. But I agree, he's probably just not ready for this at this point. So, no, that's Mike, on the offensive line side, before we move on to the last position battle here, do you see there being anybody else scratching for playing time, maybe in a rotational battle that we haven't talked about yet today?
Yeah, so I think Christian Jones, saying the lights may be turning on here soon, trying to work himself into that, that top 7, top 8 rotation that you're going to need throughout the season. Big kid, big offensive tackle, got a lot. Rafidi Jermai is another kid that you don't really know what you have with him yet, and I think he's got a lot of upside. So, we'll see if those two guys can get in there. And then Isaiah Hookfin, I think, is really turning a lot of heads, and he could jump into this guard battle as well. And I could see him, if not this year, him and Tyler Johnson are going to be a big part of the line next year as they continue to develop and progress. So.
Yeah, Hookfin was the Baylor commit, right? Under
Yep.
Matt Rule. That kind of has all the upside in the world, and that was kind of one of those low key, under the radar flips from Matt Rule's Baylor recruiting classes that could really play out well. So.
Okay. And then this last battle here. So you're going to have Deshaun Jameson at one corner slot on the outside. Now you've got Josh Thompson and Jalen Green kind of going at it here, which is another embarrassment of riches is the secondary this year. So you look at a lot of these position groups and it's like, man, like it hasn't been like this in Texas in a little while. So Josh Thompson right now, I believe, running with the ones. Jalen Green obviously has starts under his belt, has struggled at times, both him and Josh Thompson. Josh Thompson can't really stay healthy, so that's kind of been the thing with him. And we'll see these two guys duke it out. I think Josh Thompson, even if he starts on the outside, could shift down into the nickel role sometimes. So you got a lot of flexibility with these kids. Jalen Green was a highly recruited corner right there with Anthony Cook, who is now back with the team. So that's an interesting story in itself. So he could kind of make his way, into this battle as well as we kind of go through camp. But you look at it here, these two kids, both juniors, they're going to duke it out. It's just going to make them better. And the secondary, you got your safeties, man, who are, going to be probably the top 3 position group there with Stearns. And so we'll see what happens with this. I'm excited to see it because now you're building depth. So whichever guy doesn't start, one goes down. I mean, you just slot the next one right in, and that's what great teams do. So what are you guys' thoughts on the secondary and, the Josh Thompson, Jalen Green battle?
Jay, what you think?
No, Green is somebody from his recruitment that I've been excited about, and I'm hoping that he can put it all together on the field because the talent's obviously there. Health to have, when you have this much depth in the secondary, when you have a couple of injury concerns, that makes you feel a little bit better, but you still want to see all of these guys on the field and see what they do, being able to rotate them in and out, just like on an offensive line, having some secondary guys that you can put in there to give your ones a breather and trust that they'll do enough to get the job done. It is very, very important. So whoever loses that battle will still play an important role. It's not like there aren't a ton of DBs on the field all the time in this conference. So they'll both get their chances if they're healthy, and I'm hoping that they are. But Kerry, when either one of you, when you mentioned Caden Stearns earlier, that's a guy. Man, if he can just be 100% and play a full season, the guy is an All-American. He's got that kind of ability, and
he's a Thorpe finalist if he's healthy the entire season.
Easily
Yeah.
For this program to take a jump, players like Caden Stearns are going to have to realize their potential, and it's not necessarily any fault of his own to this point. But that guy, if he's on the field, that elevates Texas as a football team.
Yeah,
so go ahead. I was going to say this secondary was one of the best that we've seen in a while. Go ahead.
The defense as a whole, man. Like, look at it.
Yeah.
Like, you've got 3 guys on the All Big 12 team. You've got 2 of them in the secondary. You've got Stearns, and Deshaun Jameson's getting a lot of NFL buzz just with his athleticism. Really, the light turned on. He was kind of the third guy when it was Jalen Green and Anthony Cook. You still got those guys too. So like the light could turn on for one of them this year. And then you spin down to Joseph Osai is probably going to be up there with the best defensive player of the year in the conference. And so you've got some really, really good talent and NFL talent on the defense this year that you got to take advantage of this year. There's just, and like Jay, you always say, man, like, is Herman the guy? And I think if we have a season this year, 9 wins is going to be a disappointment, at least for me. And I know so like 8 wins now with a reduced schedule. I don't know if that's enough, man. Like, you should be able to beat OU. You should be able to beat OU or Oklahoma State, or at least split it. You know what I mean? So it's just too much talent on this team to not go far this year if there is a season. So.
Well, yeah, that's why we're gonna have a whole show breaking down the expectations and looking at the schedule for this. We could knock that, like, that's a whole we could go crazy on that, but I do absolutely agree. I think anything less than 9 wins is it's going to start bringing some questions around. So, we'll see, but we kind of got our time hitting us here a little bit. So, guys, what do you think? Do you want to get into some news of this week? Just kind of hit some of these bullet points and kind of get caught up on everything happening around the world. Jay,
let's roll through some stuff.
Let's talk about some Astros real quick. I guess we could, but so as of last week's show, the Astros were under 500. They still are this week. As of last week, they were 4.5 games back of Oakland. They still are this week. The only thing that's changed is they're now 3 ahead of last place Seattle in the AL West instead of 2. Big week ahead. Got to finish up a Seattle series, but then 2 really tough opponents with the Colorado Rockies and San Diego Padres. You just hope they kind of start turning the corner a little bit. What do you guys think? Yeah,
I mean, so Greinke pitched well. Framber threw well last night. And Yordan returning yesterday, I think. Yordan Alvarez, the reigning AL Rookie of the Year, returning to your lineup after missing everything up to this point. That's an instant catalyst, and that they didn't wait long they put up 9 runs in the first inning last night with his return to the lineup. So it's sort of an emphatic statement, and hopefully one that I hope at least sticks around for a little bit. But the pitching has been all right. It's the bats that have worried me and have not looked very sharp. So, Mike, you watch quite a bit of baseball. You follow this on from a level of a fan, from the level of someone that wagers a little bit on things. So from an Astros perspective, what are there any things that have stood out to you, and maybe even just quickly from the season in general?
Yeah, so I think with the Astros, it's well, look, you lose Garrett Cole, that's going to devastate obviously any team. Goes to the Yankees, pitching well for them. You get Verlander going down. Now instead of that 3-horse starting pitching rotation, you're down to 1. The bullpen is a bunch of rookies right now, so you're going to have some struggles there. And I think you need your offense to carry you through a lot of this season. And obviously with Jordan being out and, a couple of guys struggling, want the light switch to show on for Kyle Tucker at some point. Maybe they'll trade him to the Tigers. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is on the pitching side of it. Just from the Astros perspective, at least from, I'm not the biggest Astros fan, but, I do follow them. Obviously, they're a Texas team. Still got a ton of talent. They just got to get some pitching in there. And I think Dusty Baker, he's the guy to be there right now, but he's not a high quality manager as far as in game. So I think the whole stopgap with everything that happens, with the report and everything, he's the guy that has to be there. But I was watching the game the other day and I'm like, man, he's riding with this guy. And it's like, take him out. Like, this kid's kick, get a ball across the plate right now. And you're, leaving him in. So I just think that there could be some better in-game management. And then I think they extended him a year, right? So, I don't know. It's be kind of tough for me to see that. I love Dusty, love everything he's, done in his career. I don't know if I see it with the in-game management. But who knows? They could turn it around. Baseball's a funny game. Things can change in a week. So, we'll see what happens with that aspect of it.
Well, we got a couple minutes left here. I know we wanted to get into NBA real quick. Mike, you're a big Spurs fan. Any thoughts, anything you want to share about that long time playoff streak coming to an end?
Amazing. I just think Greg Popovich, amazing job. Only missed it by, a game or so. So they had an opportunity to get there. They beat Philadelphia. Great job. I mean, I don't know if we're able to see that again in sports. A lot of it obviously was Tim Duncan, but you got to think like these guys that they find is crazy. Derek White, like who would have thought this guy would be a high-level NBA player? DeJounte Murray at the back end of the draft. Lonnie Walker looks like he could be something. Turning Drew Eubanks into a serviceable center. It's just kind of crazy that as you go through the years and see that Spurs have done this well, even with, obviously the major superstars they've had. So, what do you guys' thoughts?
Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, I just, it goes all the way back to like Manu in the second round and their ability to identify talent and bring it in and coach it up. And, Pop's the man. Like I'll never root for the Spurs as a Rockets fan. But Pop's the man. Like absolutely. The streak is tremendous. The 22 years in the playoffs is incredible for any sport at any level. And Pop's the guy, man, for sure.
Yeah, it's incredible what he's been able to do. It's going to be fascinating to see where things go from here in terms of what he decides to do with his career. There's talk about Becky Hammond going to be an NBA coach. That people mentioning the Bulls. Some of these, like, we'll see. And I think it's going to be an interesting process to see how the Spurs take on a rebuild, so to say, now after all this long streak comes to an end. So. But that's what I think now the Rockets have the longest streak. I think it's 8 years is now the longest streak. So
is that right?
I think so. So a little something to carry into the postseason for the Rockets. But
that just tells you how impressive 22-year run is. That now the next longest streak is 8. So
absolutely. Well, guys, the clock's ticking on us here, and Mike, thanks for having you on, man. We love having you.
Breaking news: Pelicans fired Alvin Gentry. Breaking news as we're going off the air.
Oh God.
That's huge.
All
breaking news here.
All you Pelicans fans that listen to this thing. Mike, thanks again for coming on, man. We appreciate you as
Thanks,
always.
guys.
We'll have you on again
Appreciate it,
soon.
man.
Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah,
All right,
let's
Thanks for listening, everybody.
we'll have our big preview show here in a few weeks. But otherwise, thanks everybody for listeing, and thanks again, Mike, for for coming on. And
Yeah,
spending some time
appreciate
with
it,
us.
guys.
Thanks, guys.
ATX representing. Fatal, baby. Falling on 6 on a Saturday. Can the drip and swing now?